Vikings trade down, and then they pick Mekhi Blackmon out of USC. Let's break him down. Let's break down the trade. And let's get ready for day 3 on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You like that on 3, 1, 2, 3. You like it!
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, your pal, and the kid you copied off in math class. My name is Luke Braun. You can find me on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL. You can find the show on Twitter at Locked On Vikings. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, each and every day. You can find this show wherever you find your favorite podcasts, including YouTube, maybe even Amazon Fire or Roku. If you have them, you can just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen. Hashtag Everydayers Sound Off. It is a Saturday show, special little thing. This is the day 2 recap, and the Vikings did not trade back into the second round. Like a lot of people thought they would maybe give up a player or whatever. We talked about that yesterday as a possibility. Nothing came to fruition. Who knows how close something was? No idea. I gotta say though, sitting there watching the second round, guys coming off the board. I mean, there were guys who I thought were first rounders that fell into the second. You kind of wish, man, I wish I was there. But as they were up at like 55, not a lot of guys moved me, to be honest. I think I would have loved if like they were within striking distance. Cam Smith fell a little further than I thought. I would have loved that, but not a lot of guys really moved me. And I wasn't sitting there thinking like, man, it really, really sucks that the Vikings don't have a pick. Like, of course you want one, but I don't know. DJ Hawkinson's pretty sweet. I'm at a lot of peace with it, I guess. Then they traded down. They traded pick 87 for 102. So that moves back 15 slots. And for that trouble, they were rewarded with the 49ers' 5th and 7th round picks, 164 and 222, if I'm not mistaken. So they'll have now 5 picks on day 3. That's pretty nice. 7 picks total, back to 7 picks total. So we'll have a lot of guys to talk about tomorrow, which there will be a show tomorrow breaking down the day. And of course, a whole bunch of shorts on YouTube and stuff and social posts and all that. Just, you know, you'll find me. I'll be saying stuff. But what's interesting when you trade down, a lot of people get really, really mad about that because I think it's kind of the point is twofold. The argument is twofold. One, that, you know, oh, you're going to miss out on the best player in the 3rd round. You're going to trade down pat. You could have taken somebody, you know, they were at 87, Jair Brown, out of Penn State, Tank Bigsby, running back people like, Kobe Turner, DeMarvion Overshown people liked. I heard a lot about Dorian Williams or DJ Williams, right? Or no, Dorian Williams, Tulane linebacker, a tackle, Darnell Washington, the big giant Georgia tight end. A lot of people were into him. Michael Wilson. I don't think they were going to take another receiver after they got Addison, Jordan Battle, Broderick Martin, who's a massive reach by most people's opinions of him. That was a Lions pick. Ricky Stromberg, who was he might have been on the day 3 contest if I remember. Siaki Ika, a kicker, another wide receiver out of Cincinnati, a tight end out of Alabama, Cameron Latu, and then the Vikings take Blackman. So if you will notice, none of those guys were cornerbacks. No cornerbacks go in the between 87 and 102. So it's really difficult for me to look at that list of people and say, who are the Vikings super high on? They risked missing out on, and then they got punished. And when you think about trading back, you're really selling risk. You know, like it's not, you're not exchanging the 87th best player for the 102nd best player. The draft isn't that exact, right? It's not that accurate. Teams are not that good at taking guys in the right order. You're taking the 87th best opportunity and trading it for the 102nd best opportunity. But if we are to believe Kwesi, when he goes up on the podium afterwards and he says, yeah, we were going to take him at 87, but we liked the offer from the 49ers, so we traded back. Which I full on believe that he was the top corner on their board at that time, because the board of corners looked exactly the same, and that's who they took, right? What I don't necessarily believe is, oh, we would totally have been happy with him at 87, because I don't know, that you're eking extra value out of it. Clearly, you know, you're trying to recoup a little bit. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. Shout out to my hashtag everydayers, and I hope that you stick with Locked On Vikings tomorrow and the next day as we talk about the day 3 picks and all the undrafted guys. I've got lots of content coming for you. But first, let me talk to you about the only day 2 pick, which is Mekhi Blackmon out of USC, another Trojan, Jordan Addison's sparring partner. By the way, like those guys got to know each other real well in camp and probably will continue to in Vikings camps now. So that's really fun. Blackman is he's an inside-outside flexibility corner, I think. I think he played mostly outside, not a lot of experience in the slot, but the skill set that he has, I think he is absolutely fine with a two-way go. I think he's willing enough as a like a B-gap run fitter. I mean, he's small. He's very slight, and that's going to be the reason that he falls, and you can really see it. I mean, he'll get out physical all the time, but he'll try. He's got the want to. I see a lot of people use the word feisty with him, like he's a fighter. Ooh, he really wants to get in your face and stuff. I don't necessarily see that. I see handsy, and I want to put that together before I really try to like explain it too bad, because I'll probably just say something that doesn't make sense. But he uses his hands and tries to redirect you quite a bit. But I think that's more of a crutch than it is a mentality in some of these cases. Because if you are really like, I look at like Deonte Banks, that's a fighter. I mean, Joey Porter's like the guy of guys here, but those guys will get into your face. They'll step into you. They'll jam you in press. I think Blackman is kind of grabbing and tugging and pulling and fighting as a way, because I think that's the best way he knows to disrupt. But I don't necessarily know if that's like, I mean, I don't think he's the guy getting 15-yard penalties or trying to make you, punch him in the face so you get a 15-yard penalty. Like, not that kind of fighter. I don't want you to get that sense. I think it's a little bit more intentional than that. But again, there's the want to, and there are reps where he does just win the route because he shocked your pads good enough and, screwed up your timing, and or screwed up your spacing. And like, all right, well, now quarterback can't throw there, and you just won the rep. You just get to be in phase all the time. But I think the best way he gets in phase isn't that. It's really the way he transitions. When he and by transition I mean when you have to go from a back pedal or hop stepping or shuffle stepping or whatever footwork technique that you're using to turn and run. That's I call it like a hip transition. That's a terrible word for it, but that requires a certain flexibility and athleticism, and he definitely has that. It's very smooth. You'll hear smooth hips. Most of the time, people are talking about that. And what I really like is when he's in press, he'll press bail a lot. He's not like Christian Gonzalez, where it's like his superpower and he wants to be in press bail as much as possible because he's unstoppable in it. But he will press bail out like quite a bit. And I have some thoughts about that, but he's really good at it. There's no wasted steps. And in fact, it's like more efficient than I'm used to seeing. I'm used to seeing guys have to take a couple steps to kind of get themselves turned around. He will actually stop in the middle of a step. Like, he'll take a little outside step if you do an outside release, and a lot of times you can get corners doing that. But if he sees you kind of shimmy the other way and oh, that's just a fake outside release, I don't actually have to take that step, he will actually like pull his foot back in and plant off it and then get into a transition that way. And it makes it really fast and really efficient. That's really cool. And I want to like do that more with him. But I think he bails a lot. And this is really, I'm going to psychoanalyze it a little bit, and I could be totally wrong, but this is my theory. I think he's too conservative. I think he plays like he doesn't trust some of the ability that he has, and I think he's got more ability than he's like letting himself test. And the best way to look at that is against like deep curls. This is something that bugged me with like Keely Ringo as well. Who kind of got himself in that situation for different reasons. But when you see somebody, attack downfield in like a 12-yard comeback pattern or something like that. So he'll go downfield and he'll come at you, right? When you're a receiver, you want your weight out over your toes. You want to be sprinting and like hauling ass. And then, you break down and you come back. So there's two things. He loses to this all the time. Blackman's really struggles against those routes, and teams knew it and they attacked him with it. And the two reasons are A, he turns his hips and runs too early. He's got 8 yards of cushion and he's like bailing out. And it's like, dude, that receiver's not going to beat you for 8 yards. You have so much more time to sit and read and react and make that receiver declare something before you turn and run. That receiver wants you to turn your hips that early. That's perfect for the receiver. And he does it. But because of all the stuff I just said, the smooth hip transitions and the ability to get to turn and run and get up to speed very fast, and it's like 4.45 or something, like speed's fine, if not good. Because of all of that stuff, he can get away with pushing that so much further. But because he plays it so conservative, he ends up, the ball get caught in front of him 8 yards completely uncontested. And the other thing is, at the top of the route, there is just no breakdown technique at all. I think you have to build that from scratch. And he gets beat on this all the time. There's a lot of like hopping, and it's clunky, and it's trying to square his hips again, square his shoulders again, like turn around and then start to like zone it off like you're playing linebacker. Which maybe that's a technique I'm just not familiar with, but to me it just looks kind of like improvising. And so it means he's like beating the receiver on his route. Like when you're running a comeback, you're a wide receiver, it's like, let the cornerback beat you, right? Let him let him go too far down the field. Let him outrun you, because you're going to turn around and catch this ball underneath him. He's too good at beating the receiver on those routes, and then he gets the ball caught underneath him. He's got to not let the receiver, he's got to not beat the receiver so much. Stay with him, not ahead of him. And even when he does do that, then he's got to work on breaking down. And I think you have to build that from scratch. I think there's a lot of things you have to build from scratch, but this is going to be a Brian Flores pet project kind of thing. I really think that you see it. Like I don't want to use the word like potential or high ceiling or all that stuff, because usually people are just talking about like SPARQ scores or RAS scores or whatever when they're talking about that. But I really see, like, I can tell what Brian Flores saw in Mekhi Blackmon. And I think it's one of those things where, how much work are you going to be willing to go through to get this guy there? I see a corner that has the technique, and in particular has the functional athleticism to be a lock it down press man corner. I really do see that could be where Mekhi Blackmon goes. But to do it, I think you have to get him feeling a lot more confident in his abilities. And then I think there's just some techniques you got to teach him from scratch. So what I would love to see, this is going to be my guess for how things go in camp. I want to see this dude get lit up in camp. I know that sounds weird, but I want to see him really limit test. I want to like put him 10 yards off the ball. So we're going to have you in off coverage, which will happen on blitz looks a lot. He'll be in off coverage if it's like a cover zero blitz, because you don't have safety help, so you have to play off. I'm going to line you up 10 yards off, and I'm going to say, you don't get to move. Bolt your feet down. You don't get to move until Justin Jefferson's 2 yards away from you. Good luck. I want to, and he's going to get cooked. He's going to get absolutely killed doing that. And after every rep, I want to say, how bad did that feel? Right. And eventually he's going to be able to keep up, I think, better than he expects himself to. And then hopefully you can break him out of those scaredy cat habits of bailing too early and panicking when the ball gets and grabbing and tugging and stuff. That's all stuff you do because you're worried about getting beat. But I think he can win so many more reps than he thinks he can win. And I just want to prove that to him by putting him 10 yards off, bolting his feet to the ground and saying, you don't get to react until, or maybe it's Jordan Addison, until Jordan Addison is 2-3 yards away from you. And you're going to lose a ton of reps doing this, but we're going to find out. Say, okay, 2 yards. All right, that's not enough. Well, what about 4 yards? Now, can you turn around and keep up with Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson? Maybe. What about, 6 yards? Now, can you turn around and keep up? And we're going to know exactly where the limit is, because he is just not pushing his limits with all this stuff. And I think he can be so much better if he plays it with a little bit more recklessness. I want to see him, take the seatbelt off and go pee into the wind, act a little reckless. That's what I want to see from Mekhi Blackmon. There's also 5 more draft picks coming up. So we're going to have a long day tomorrow breaking all these guys down. Can't wait to do it. But let's talk about, I guess, what we think the Vikings are kind of looking for and some names that we could maybe keep an eye out for. Keeping it going with this episode of Locked on Vikings. Thank you all again. Hashtag everydayers. Sound off if you can. Day 3 is coming up. The Vikings are first up, I believe, at 119. They have pick 158, 164. So that's 2 5th rounders, 1 6th rounder at 211, and 1 7th rounder at 222. That's probably going to move around a whole bunch. We'll see what they do at the beginning of the day, especially. But I think there's a couple of things that there's 3 things I still want at day 3, and they're all depth-ish things or rotational things. I want another corner, and I want a corner that can go on the field. I mean, we're not going to find a starter on day 3, but I want one that can go on the field, that can be at least rotational. In this Brian Flores defense, every defensive back gets involved. Even if it's just a small rotational role, even if it's just particular matchup situations, maybe not even every game, definitely not every drive, but at some point, everybody gets involved and rotates in. There's not going to be such thing as your Chris Boyd, just on special teams kind of guy. You got to get in from scrimmage as a corner. Unless you're a total special teams ace, then I'm sure they'll figure out a way and make it work. So I want another guy there. I think they need another piece there. I don't feel great about the corner room. I still think it's a weakness, but they still don't even have a complete one. Like, they don't even have like enough guys that are inarguably rosterable. So I want another corner. There's a lot of names out there that are still on the board that I feel that I would have felt good about at 87, that I certainly would feel good about at 102, and that I feel amazing about now. And, pick 103 is on the clock right now. They're at 119. That's only 16 selections. But Kyle Kelly out of Stanford is there. Clark Phillips out of Utah. I flirted with putting him as a first rounder. I love Clark Phillips, and I'm way too high on him. I'm way higher than consensus. That's actually a super scorching take for me. There's Darius Rush out of the other South Carolina corner, a very raw athletic kind of prospect. There's Rajon Wright, who I really like as a 4th rounder. He's kind of a day 3 crush type of guy for me. Jacorian Bennett, the other Maryland corner, another sort of high athlete, but maybe a little more raw type of guy. Unless we see a run of, 6, 7 corners or something like that before the Vikings pick, they'll have a shot at one of these guys. And many of the guys I just listed, again, like I said, I would have been okay with at 87. Other guys I got like a 4th round grade on, but it's the 4th round. So let's go. I love that. They have talked a lot about a developmental quarterback. Kwesi's just said, like, yeah, we understand also that maybe you get it. Like, after not getting a quarterback in the first round, he was asked about that, and he said, yeah, we could get a developmental one maybe. Those names to watch. I've already spoken on this show a bit about Jaren Hall out of BYU, and did a whole show on Dorian Thompson-Robinson out of UCLA. Those are my 2 favorites left on the board. I think that those guys actually could end up being on-purpose starters, or at least competing for starting roles at some point in their careers in the NFL. I don't know if they win those competitions. I don't think these guys are, franchise QBs or anything like that, but you never know. And also, I feel like they offer enough to be, bridge quarterbacks. And that's what I'm looking for now in a day 3 guy. Either a lottery ticket kind of dude that's like, hey, this dude's talented as heck, but he's so raw. Maybe in 3 years he learns and we actually, backdoor our way into a QB. Low odds, but it's a lottery ticket. But really, I'm also looking for a bridge guy, because if we want to talk value, this would be the time where, what if we got a day 3 QB that wasn't a franchise guy, but you could put him in and you would be respectable, right? Think of your Nick Foles, right? Your Andy Dalton. This dude is not your franchise guy, but if you start him for a year, you're not a laughing stock. And pencil that guy in for 2024. You let Kirk Cousins walk. We're not doing more extensions on him. We're not spending a whole bunch of cap on him anymore. We're getting out of that contract, and we've just got, this is what Jaren Hall I think is perfect for. He's okay. We got Jaren Hall. Whole bunch of stuff wrong with him. I don't think he's going to be a franchise starting player, but in year 2, he's going to be good enough to at least make you respectable and not alienate the fans. And then you draft a rookie in 2024. And you have that rookie compete with whoever you take day 3 here. And that gives you you're essentially spending, say, a 5th round pick. I don't know. You spend pick 158, and in return, you get whatever Kirk Cousins cap savings you get. So we have this kind of resource positive move, and you get like a sensible transition plan into whoever you draft in 2024. And then hopefully that guy you can look at and say, okay, that's QB of the future. We traded up a whole bunch to get him, or, maybe the season goes bad and they don't have to, or whatever. That I think is the best future plan. I got a lot of people asking, what's the future plan? The other version of that plan is, okay, it's the 6th round. We could take like Tanner McKee and talk ourselves into this, or we just give Kirk Cousins another year and we'll just spend the money. Maybe we do that too. But I would say a developmental quarterback is probably a thing. Aiden O'Connell is a very late name who is like super raw. I think he's your lottery ticket guy, because there's definitely enough to him where, you can see a lot of arm talent all over the field, but the accuracy is just hideous. And he has to fix a lot of stuff about his mechanics to become a rosterable quarterback, let alone a starting one. So this is very much a shot in the dark kind of guy. There's, I mentioned Tanner McKee out of Stanford, who I think Clayton Tune. I think both those guys are kind of limited. And there's one other guy that I think, Jake Hayner, who is, I think another guy that would maybe go in that bridge QB place, but he's very improvisational. He's a hooper is the note that I have down for him. So I would keep an eye on the QBs for sure with one of these picks. And then the other thing is running backs. There's a million of them that I would like here. Guys like Roshan Johnson. I love Deuce Vaughn. There's a point where I would like Mo Ibrahim out of Minnesota, even though he's old and injured. By the 6th round, you put up with that kind of thing. There's a lot of guys at running back that I would feel very, very cool about. And I think that committee needs one more guy. It was never going to be Bijan. You're never going to go get a bell cow, but put one more dude in the committee. And what I'm really looking for is somebody who can make a tackle or miss in space. That's the real skill that I'm looking for with that. And maybe that's not a running back. Maybe that's like a small wide receiver, after a yak oriented wide receiver that can kind of play that role. But somebody you give it to on a tunnel screen and feel like that's pretty fun. Or if it's a running back, a slip screen, whatever, right? Kind of same effect on the defense you're after. So tomorrow I will be back. All right. So make sure, set your phones up, get ready to listen, go for a walk or a workout or something, because I will be talking about whatever they do on day 3. I'll break it all down for you. Might be a longer episode because there's going to be a lot to do. And then, of course, on Monday morning as well, I'll talk about the undrafted guys a little bit and kind of recap the draft on the whole and talk a little bit more big picture too. So I will see you all tomorrow. And as always, Skull.